Welcome, welcome to Sunday Punch Podcast, episode 60. We have a very special guest here. His name's Aidan Grogan. He's actually the son of a coworker of mine. I won't say your dad's name. I don't want people looking him up. I don't want people finding your address because we're going to talk about some pretty serious subjects here. But what we are going to talk about, and then we'll get into the intro and let Aidan introduce himself. But we just talked about this before the show. We're going to talk about, it's a very popular subject and hasn't been talked about enough, in my opinion. COVID-19. Really not talked about at all. As far as I'm concerned, enough. And then we'll get into President Biden had a very interesting town hall. And so we'll get into some clips for that. We'll react to a couple of his statements. And then hopefully we can talk about the New World Order. We can talk about going into the Illuminati, which I have always been interested in. And I want to know how deep it runs and if the current president may or may not have members of his cabinet that are in the Illuminati. And then we'll go ahead, and I think that'll take us. I feel like we're going to go many different areas here. So that'll take us through the entire episode, hopefully doing just 45 minutes here. We'll see how it goes. Gonna play the intro here and then let Aidan introduce himself. So without further ado, here we go.
Hey, we realize that what you're doing as head coach, you don't know how to do. So we need to give that part to somebody
enough
else.
With the do. And I want to win. Winning's the most important thing to me. All the other conferences, this is your Super Bowl, okay? The Tax Slayer Outback 7-Eleven Bowl is your Super Bowl. Welcome. Thank you, Aidan, for joining me on this fine Sunday morning.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem, brother. So I like to give all the guests an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell the people what you want them to know about you and also what you'd like to promote, and then we'll hit the ground running here.
All right. So I'm Aidan Grogan. I'm a YouTuber, documentary filmmaker, I suppose, political commentator, author. You could find me on YouTube at Aidan Grogan, just my name. The documentary that I just produced, which we'll be discussing, is there in 17 different videos. There's a playlist. So yeah, go give that a view, subscribe to the channel if you're interested. And that's about it for that.
And the YouTube documentary that Aidan is referencing is called the Promethean Syndicate. I have watched about 3 different segments. They are around 30 minutes each. I'm very interested. I think it's very good, and it's very well produced. It has a lot of different transitions. You did a lot of research, I can tell, and I think it's very good, man. So congrats.
Thank you.
So check that out. Let's hit the ground running here, dude. Biden had a little town hall, and he hit on all of the major subjects here. But since one of your segments, part 12 of the Promethean Syndicate, talks about COVID, and a big debate that we have going around right now is whether people should be mandated to get the vaccine. And this was Biden's response.
Should police officers, emergency responders, be mandated to get vaccines? And if not, should they be stay at home or let go?
Yes and yes. The 2 things that concern me, one are those who just try to make this a political issue. Freedom. I have the freedom to kill you with my COVID. No, I mean, come on. Freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Stupid idiots.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on the mandate?
Well, the real question is if they can force you to take medicine that you don't want or don't need, such as in the case of a virus with a 99% survival rate, what can they not force you to take? For instance,
Right.
this country has a history of forcibly sterilizing and lobotomizing people against their will. Who's to say that that can't happen again? So once they could force you to take medicine that you don't need or don't want.
Pause though. You need to explain that to the audience because I don't think people know what you're talking about.
Okay,
The
so
forcibly lobotomizing.
mhm. Yeah. So back in the 1910s and 1920s, during the eugenics movement that was led by the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, they funded this eugenics record office at Cold Spring Harbor, which collected biological and social information about the American population, and 64,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized due to the eugenics laws that were passed in many American states. Eugenics only became discredited because of the actions of the Nazis, where you couldn't be publicly advocating for people to be sterilized after people get shipped off to extermination camps. That's usually where it ends. But the people who are leading the COVID-19 vaccine push, such as Bill Gates, have connections all the way back to the eugenics movement. Bill Gates' father was on the board of Planned Parenthood, which was a eugenics organization originally called the American Birth Control League. There just so happens to be a W.H. Gates on the membership list of the American Eugenics Society in the 1920s. Bill Gates' father was W.H. Gates II. So there's that connection established.
Okay, so we have that established now, and you think that now that's translating to COVID-19 in a little bit more subtle way with this vaccine mandate discussion.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm not saying that the government is sterilizing you with the COVID vaccine, but I'm saying that in the future, if they can force you to take medicine and vaccinations which you don't want nor need, they can force you to do whatever they want.
Right. So you mentioned Bill Gates. Talk a little bit about Watson Works.
Watson Works. Okay. Yeah. So that IBM, just so people know, launched Microsoft. The reason that Microsoft is huge is because IBM made that prominent, because Bill Gates' mother was a regent at the University of Washington, and she knew the CEO of IBM, and that's what launched Microsoft. But anyway, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, IBM is assisting with companies to safely return to the workforce by offering all of this very dystopian technology, such as the blockchain technology. It basically just allowing companies to access your health data and store everything digitally. That's the essentials of that. You have to kind of just look into it and watch the creepy videos they do with the female voice saying how things are going to be from here on out.
And so is that like a digital like passport that they're, so like basically that be then you take your digital records, and is the point to then say, oh, this person had the vaccine, and then give them a
it's pretty much a digital health passport, where without that passport, then well, you can't come to work. And then in the future, presumably, you can't go to the supermarket, you can't get into the bar. So
right.
Do as we say, or you won't be able to be a normal citizen.
That's that's always, if you're talking like overarching COVID-19, like, people focus on this lower level of mandate, no mandate, where they don't see kind of the bigger picture here. And that like Bill Gates and all of, the top 1% have made like $500 billion throughout COVID. And that it just so happens that Bill Gates has the technology to now do this digital passport. Mm-hmm. So that leads me to my next question, conspiracy wise. Do you think it was released on purpose? Or, actually, some people don't even think it was released from the Wuhan lab. They just think it was just random. So if you could go into a little bit of that.
Well, here's the circumstances around the origin of COVID. 10 years ago, around 2010, Bill Gates, through his foundation, launched a global vaccine push. And Fauci was the head of one of the leadership councils. So he's intimately intertwined with Bill Gates going back years. Then the NIH, which Fauci runs, is funding gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab to make coronaviruses more transmissible to humans. That's come out now. That's been established, even though Fauci lied about it and said they didn't fund gain-of-function. And then a virus just happens to escape from the lab. And conveniently for those at the economic and political elite, it puts the entire world on lockdown. The billionaires prosper like never before. And ultimately, they kind of crushed the global populist wave that was occurring from 2016 onward. The British voted to leave the European Union. The Americans elected Trump. There was just a sort of populist revolt against the elites, against globalism or globalization, whatever you want to call it. And that was all brought to an end once COVID happened.
For the people that don't know, can you describe the difference between globalism and populism?
So globalism is essentially the transferring of national sovereignty to supranational organizations like the United Nations or the European Union, the IMF, the World Bank, with the expectation that more international cooperation will lead to better peace and security. And I think anyone who's paid attention to events in the past 20 years can conclude that the opposite actually happens, and you lose your control over your own life and your own nation. And of course, this all benefits the big banks and big corporations, especially the private central banks, which run everything. Mm-hmm. And then populism is both right-wing and left-wing. There's left-wing populists, and you could put some of the Bernie Sanders supporters into that camp, who recognize that there's a big problem with the current state of political affairs worldwide. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Power is being wielded by a very, very small segment of the population, and they have mismanaged the affairs of the United States and Britain and other Western countries. So that's populism in a nutshell. It's just a backlash against the elites.
Yeah. I guess that really leads me to my main question. Are they poisoning the tap water?
The short answer is yes, if you consider sodium fluoride to be poison. Now, there was a major Harvard study which found that sodium fluoride does lower fertility and IQ levels. And
oh, really?
Yeah, that's been confirmed.
And sodium, by the way, I will say thank you to my mom. I have never had outside of like being a little bit hungover, and it was my last choice scenario, I have never throughout my life drank tap water.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought they were poisoning it. Even as a young boy, I'm like, this can't be safe.
Yeah, well, it doesn't taste safe for one. You taste it, and it's just you need to be filtering your water, and that's just regardless if it's sodium fluoride or not. You should be filtering your water. But yeah, it does lower sperm counts as well. Sperm counts, by the way, are down 60% across the Western world since 1973. So at this rate, men are going to be totally infertile in the next few decades. So that's something that's absolutely catastrophic, that endangers the species, which no one in mainstream media or the Ivy League or among our political elites is discussing whatsoever. But yeah, and then the other big concern going off the tap water poison question is that it's not only the tap water, it's also the food. It's multiple studies have linked GMOs to reduced fertility, especially gossipol, which is found in the cotton plant. That acts as a sterilization weapon against bugs, and in animals and in human males, it causes spermatogenesis arrest even at low doses. Gossipol is approved by the FDA for human and animal consumption. So anything with cottonseed oil in it, you want to avoid if you're looking to have kids in the future.
So do you think this is a plan, or do you think this is just the incompetence of production, where it's just like, hey, at each of these plants, they're like,
it's a plan. It's 100%.
It's a plan, but not just like people being like, companies and factories being incompetent and pretty much giving cancer to people because they're like, what makes a chicken better is by injecting them with like 1 billion steroids. Plus, we can sell a bunch of chickens. You think there was even an overarching plan of that are like, hey, wait a second, we can't, like you said, openly eliminate populations through eugenics. But what we can do is put a small amount of poison in the tap water and a small amount of poison in all of the foods they eat. And then when they're like 60, they'll get cancer and they'll think it's just like, whoopsie daisy. You think that was
it's not only that I think, it's that I know, because the documents are totally clear. And there's several that you could look at. In 1969, Planned Parenthood wrote a memo to the Population Council, which was founded by the Rockefellers, who again led the eugenics movement, and Planned Parenthood was itself a eugenics organization. And they discussed a wide variety of methods to reduce fertility in the United States. And among those methods include causing chronic depression, promoting homosexuality, adding sterilization agents to the water supply, and delaying marriage or even getting rid of marriage altogether, discouraging private home ownership, a number of different techniques that they discussed. Now, the question is, did they implement them?
And this is in a memo.
This is in an official memo that was sent from Planned Parenthood to the Rockefeller-created Population Council. It's called the Jaffe Memo. It was written by a guy, Frederick Jaffe, who I believe was the vice president. So that's an official document that you can read. Now, and then there's Rockefeller Foundation documents in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where they discuss how to lower fertility. And the 1968 report says, quote, more work is in progress on immunological methods, such as vaccines, to lower fertility, and much more work is required if a solution is to be found here. Using the term solution is quite shady considering the final solution.
So I just want to put it up because I know that people listen to this. If you're not watching, Jaffe is spelled Jaffe.
Yes. Yeah.
And so this is an official memo. And by the way, if you're like thinking about this, like it's really not, like, to me, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't you do that? Like, if you're like, have any sort of power, like you're going to think to yourself, wait a second, how can we, like, in their mind, save the world because there's too many people, right? And it's going to take up all the resources. So it's not, to me, it's like people are like, oh, come on, that's a conspiracy. It's like, why would it be? It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, it's actually Darwinism. And that's what people need to understand. It's not that there's too many people in the world. It's that there's so many people that it's a burden on the resources which giant corporations would otherwise exploit for themselves. And that's there's another memorandum that was written by Henry Kissinger, who is the Secretary of State, and that was written under Ford, which advocates for depopulating Africa. And the U.S. would lead that move through international NGOs like Planned Parenthood and the Population Council. And he says in that memo, as if I'll summarize it, that a rapidly expanding population in Africa is going to be a burden on the natural resources, especially the minerals of Africa. And so if the U.S. economy and other advanced industrialized economies are going to be able to continue to grow and expand their GDP, they're going to need access to those resources. So if Africa's population is expanding, that's going to mean more for the billions of people in Africa and less for the multinational corporations. So when people say, oh, there's too many people, especially when a billionaire says that, you need to be very suspicious.
Right.
Especially when they're part of the eugenics movement in their family history.
Yeah, or it was on like their, like you said with Bill Gates, like he was a member of a previous kind of panel of people in the company.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and there's that too. It's just the connections are amazing, but the average person thinks that, well, Bill Gates, he's just profiting and he's just a greedy billionaire. And I'm making the case that no, he is a high level psychopathic billionaire.
I don't know what happened with the emails with him. Can you just give a brief? I don't know. Like, I know that he was sending some creepy emails. He got caught by cancel culture himself.
I didn't hear too much about that. Are you talking about the Fauci emails?
Oh no. Bill Gates was like emailing interns. He's like, "Hey, you want
Yeah. Well,
you want a higher position in IBM?"
I did hear about that, and he's been engaging in creepy behavior going back a long time, and was a personal friend of Jeffrey Epstein. He visited Jeffrey Epstein's mansion, I believe multiple times. He flew on the Lolita Express. And Bill Gates himself was hosting naked pool parties at his mansion in Seattle, dating back 20-something years. Even after he met his now ex-wife Melinda, he was having these naked parties where he would go to a strip club and hire all these women to come swim naked with him and his friends. And
to be honest, if I had $1 billion, that would pretty much be my Tuesday. So I can't really hate on Bill Gates.
But there's others.
You'd be like, there's Adam. It's Wednesday. He's got 45 strippers in the pool.
Would you memorize all the license plates of your employees' cars and force them to work on weekends, though? That's the real question.
No. Well, he's a complete lunatic.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, because I want to stay on kind of like the political aspect here.
Mm-hmm.
Biden kept going and had quite a few different things to say. And then I want to talk about kind of the current political landscape and a couple predictions for 2024. So let's just watch this from the town hall the other night.
What about gas prices? Because some states are seeing...
Gas prices relate to a foreign policy initiative that is about something that goes beyond the cost of gas. And that's because of the supply being withheld by OPEC. And so there's a lot of negotiation that is, there's a lot of Middle Eastern folks want to talk to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'm going to talk to them.
Do you have a timeline for gas prices of when you think they may start coming down?
My guess is you'll start to see gas prices come down as we get by and going into the into next year in 2022. I don't see anything that's going to happen in the meantime that's going to significantly reduce gas prices.
He kept going.
55 corporations, for example, in the United States of America, making over $40 billion, don't pay a cent. Not a single little red cent. You know, if you're in real estate, major real estate, ask them. They know they should be paying a little more than 21%. We can pay for this whole thing. I have it written on a card here, but I won't bore you with the detail.
The question was on on community colleges, which was a big campaign promise that you made. You talked about that along the campaign trail.
Yeah, and I'm going to get it done. And if I don't, I'll be sleeping alone for a long time. I'm going off to COP26 in Scotland, and in I don't know, I guess it's 2 weeks or a week. I'm losing track of time. 40% of all products coming into the United States of America on the West Coast go through Los Angeles and what am I doing here?
Is it Long Beach?
Long Beach, thank you. So what I have said, you're shaking your head no, but let me tell you something, Jack. It's the truth.
Dude, where do you want to start?
Well, that first little blunder he had where he just stops talking, to me, that's him forgetting what his Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, told him to say, because Biden doesn't have a brain of his own. They just tell him, okay, this is what you're going to say. And then he can't remember anything. So, but he is not in control of his administration. In past administrations, it's been obvious that there's some puppet masters pulling the strings, but this guy is just a joke. He's just an image they put up there, and the Council on Foreign Relations people are running the show behind the scenes.
I like how they do help him though. Can you imagine if Trump was like, I can't remember, would Anderson Cooper jump in and be like, Long Beach is the answer, sir?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'd be sitting there thinking that they're gonna clip this together and make Trump look like the idiot and play it 24/7 headlines. So on Brian Stelter's CNN show, Trump must be deranged.
Orange man bad.
Exactly.
But just to show you the difference here, where Anderson's like, we were talking about community college, sir. And then he was like, oh, yeah, well, I won't be sleeping next to Jill if I don't take that one. Yeah, I still have sex at 90 years old. Everyone picture that now. This is how they would have an interview with Trump.
We were supposed to, as mentioned, be watching you on a debate stage right now. We're not doing that, so let's clear up a few things from the last one. You were asked point blank to denounce white supremacy. In the moment, you didn't. You asked some follow-up questions. Who specifically? A couple of days later, on a different show, you denounced white supremacy.
No,
My question to you is,
you've done this to me and everybody.
Why does it seem like
I denounce white supremacy? Okay,
you did 2 days later.
White supremacy for years, but you always do it. You always start off with a question. You didn't ask Joe Biden whether or not he denounces Antifa. I watched him on the same basic show with Lester Holt, and he was asking questions like Biden was a child.
So this is a little bit of a dodge.
Are you listening? I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
What's your next question?
Do you feel, it feels sometimes you're hesitant to do so, like you wait a beat.
Here we go again. Every time, in fact, my people came, I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
And frankly, you want to know something? I denounce Antifa, and I denounce these people on the left that are burning down our cities that are run by Democrats who don't know what they're doing.
While we're denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that. Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true and that disavow QAnon in its entirety?
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is a satanic cult run by the deep state.
Study the subject. I'll tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are, and I know how they're burning down cities run by Democrats, not run by Republicans.
Senator.
I don't know about it. I don't know about QAnon. I don't know. Well, I know they're against pedophilia. I'm against pedophilia. I've never been into children. I tried it once, never been into it. Everyone knows this. But did you see the difference between the two? There's Anderson Cooper. Long Beach, sir. Long Beach is what you're looking for. To then you go to the Trump town hall, which is supposed to be completely unbiased NBC, right? And you have... What is QAnon? QAnon is a group run by what? A few thousand people? Does it even need to be mentioned by anything? But that's the differences. You go to the Joe Biden town hall, it's all, hey, let's hold his hand, give him an ice cream scoop. You go to the Trump town hall, and you can tell in the tone, like she was like, I just told you. And he's like, well, okay, calm down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's just it's been 4 years of that when he was in there, because if you're a member of their privileged, approved elite, then they give you softball questions. Same thing with like George W. Bush when he gives interviews with the elite media. Notice how much they love George W. Bush now. So yeah. if you're part of the club, they treat you like that, and if you're an outsider like Trump, they attack you with hostility.
I do want to comment on QAnon a little bit because, by the way, I love that he was like, maybe I am the savior. Exactly. I don't know. People are saying it. I didn't say it, but people are saying it. She says, do you think that there is an elite that likes pedophilia, as if like Epstein didn't just happen and like all the plane rides and everything else? And we'll play a clip from the Promethean Syndicate here that goes in to a little bit of this this occult that's going on.
A Nebraska state senator and attorney named John DeCamp published a book in 1992 called The Franklin Cover-Up, in which he alleged that children were brought into the Bohemian Grove and ritualistically raped and murdered in black magic rituals at the hands of some of the members during the 1980s. DeCamp said he personally interviewed several children from orphanages who identified the Bohemian Grove as the location of the abuse. The Clinton emails, published by WikiLeaks, are rife with occult references to Moloch. An email Hillary Clinton received from her Deputy Chief of Staff, Jacob Sullivan, asks her whether a paragraph from a statement about the Gaddafi government violates the Owl Minerva rule. Jacob Sullivan, a Rhodes Scholar, is the current National Security Advisor to President Biden. Another email Clinton received says, "With fingers crossed, the old rabbit's foot out of the box in the attic. I will be sacrificing a chicken in the backyard to Moloch."
Nobody talks about. That's an email that was sent. She's referencing
the Canaanite god of child sacrifice, Moloch.
She's referencing in an email. I don't know if they're I wouldn't even joke about that in an email, and I say some pretty wild shit. I would not say, "Hey, it'd be funny if I sacrificed a chicken to that god that was like the king of child molestation."
Basically, and people don't know who Moloch is. They don't know about the Bohemian Grove. The average American still thinks that if you talk about Eyes Wide Shut parties, you're a kook. But there's actual video of business and political elites meeting at the Bohemian Grove. They're all dressed up in robes like druids, doing this ritual where they burn an effigy of a child to a 40-foot owl statue of Moloch, the Canaanite god of child sacrifice. So the idea that stuff doesn't go on is patently false. Now, in the case of pedophilia, that was a Nebraska Senator, Richard DeCamp, who was onto something in the late 80s and 90s, and the Washington Times was also had a lead on it too, because these kids were being transported around the country by this wealthy businessman by the name of Larry King, not the cable host, but a Republican businessman. And so it's not just Democrats, it's the Republican establishment as well. And it was a total cover up. There was supposed to be a documentary that was going to air on the Discovery Channel that was going to expose American elites trafficking little kids around the country. And then just at that time, Congress is debating regulating the cable television industry. And according to what DeCamp says in his book, messages were delivered in no uncertain terms that if this documentary aired on the Discovery Channel, the TV industry would probably lose the debate. So subsequently, all the copies of the documentary were gotten rid of and it never aired. But you can find it on YouTube. It's called Conspiracy of Silence, and it's real old and grainy, but that's what goes on in among the American elite. And it's just kind of sad that none of this is exposed. Like Epstein's just the tip of the iceberg. He was just kind of the pimp for the elite. And when he got caught, they're like, "Oh, let's take out the pimp."
Yeah. No one even talks about that. It's like a meme. It's a joke. A guy was murdered to silence him.
Yeah. It became like Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Everybody says that, but it's literally a meme. And I think it prevents people from actually looking into the case to say, okay, he had connections to Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew and Bill Gates, all these powerful people that are flying his private jet to his island, even Trump. But the funny thing about Trump is like 10 or 15 years ago, supposedly Epstein was at Mar-a-Lago and was like flirting with young girls, and Trump thought that was weird and kicked him out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I can't possibly picture Trump doing that, but
exactly. But it's pretty obvious that Trump is not into underage people. Maybe he knew about stuff, and maybe they had dirt on him where they're like, if you expose us, we'll expose you. So he just says stuff like, they really hate pedophiles.
QAnon, I don't know about them, but they really. So to get to the bottom of this, we say, obviously pedophilia exists. The Super Bowl, let's keep it on sports. The Super Bowl is the most sex trafficked day in America, by the way. Anyone wondering why is because there's giant crowds of people that people can get lost in. Anyways, moving on. But how does this, I wonder how that all started. Was there just one guy who was into kids and then he got dirt on someone, and then from there, this whole ring of people
Well,
like
it's
started?
it's something that ruling classes have obviously engaged in since the beginning of civilization, especially when a civilization is in its decadent phase where it's starting to collapse and the elite get into all this psychotic behavior. So Moloch is just bringing back an ancient Canaanite ritual where they would in Carthage, which if people know the history, that's the city that was burned to the ground by the Romans. It's in northern Africa, but they would worship Moloch and throw little babies into a fiery pit, sacrificing them to Moloch. So these child sacrifice, child abuse, sex assault rituals have been around since the beginning of civilization, and it just doesn't really go away. This is what the elites do, and it's basically when you have all the money in the world and you have 15 hookers over every night, eventually you run out of things to give you pleasure, and so you can only obtain satisfaction out of hurting people. And so that's where it just gets into it just becomes this progression towards more and more degeneracy to a point where it's just like demonic.
Any good documentaries on the Bohemian Grove?
Well, there's the documentary called Dark Secrets Inside the Bohemian Grove, which was created by Alex Jones. And people
we have the documents, Joe.
Exactly. You can think whatever you want of Alex Jones, but regardless, he snuck in there in 2000, or was perhaps allowed to get in. Who knows? He kind of thinks he was allowed to get in. But he got the footage of them worshiping Moloch in this very bizarre ancient Canaanite ritual, and he got out alive. So
I like how this should be talked about all the time.
Yeah, why doesn't the mainstream media ever cover it? That's the question.
It's like,
obviously they're in on it.
Well, a couple of them are invited. But if you walked into, if I was like, hey, even if it was public, and I was like, hey, Aidan, I have a party going on this Saturday. Come on over. And you walked in, and we were all dressed in robes, and I had an owl statue. You would tell everyone that story probably forever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just like, it's just something they do. They're having fun.
There is a statue in the Bohemian Grove of this. So everyone who comes in there, they see that and they're like, that means don't tell. Otherwise, right. Something bad's gonna happen to it. And I think that's
I guess.
And that's the thing is they blackmail each other. And so Epstein at his mansion, he had cameras in every single room. This is according to his own victims. They said he had cameras in every room, even the bathroom. And then he had this little area with just computer monitors. So he had a view of every single place in his mansion. So if Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton or Bill Gates were doing something real shady, he has it on video, and he could probably send them the clip in an email a week later, like, oh, just so you know, Bill Gates, we got this video of you, and if you ever want to do something that we don't endorse, this might come out. So that's how they maintain control.
I like how they're all idiots too. It's like, how did you not foresee blackmail coming from this?
Well, it's like if you're friends with a bunch of psychopaths, what makes you think like they're actually on your side?
Yeah, no, I know him. He wouldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, he'd only kidnap little kids and bring them to an island, and that's full of demonic gargoyles. I'm sure he's a good friend.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton is just allowed to do whatever he wants still.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. Predictions, because we're getting to that 45-minute mark. Predictions for 2024 presidential election. Is Trump coming back, or we got a dark horse?
Well, I think if Ron DeSantis runs, Trump won't run because they're so allied with each other. But I could definitely see Trump with his big ego putting himself back in the race, and he's very much still got a very, very loyal base. The boomers still love Donald Trump, so I think he'd have a fair chance at winning. But part of me wants Trump to just kind of go away and get some younger person who's more educated and more informed about what's going on. Because he just, in some of those interviews, I'm like, oh man, he could expose so many things and give so much more of eloquent answers, but he's just, I think he did a good job as president overall. But 2024, I don't know what's going to happen. And in fact, like if it's neocon versus neoliberal, if it's two establishment picks, then I'm not even going to vote because it's just ridiculous at that point.
Right. People forget that Trump only won because he was kind of like the rebel outsider.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's not like, to me, he was never like Republican.
No, he wasn't. And he was a Democrat for a number of years. He just gave money to different candidates. But yeah, when it's like he didn't align with the DC consensus on the three main issues. So whether the Republicans or Democrats, it's trade, foreign policy, and immigration. So like the Republicans, they'll say they're against open borders, but they're not, because the big business elites that kind of run the show want cheap labor. But he was actually against our immigration laws. He was against our foreign policy, and he was against our rigged trade deals like NAFTA. And for that, they set out to destroy him, the whole establishment. And that includes the Republican elites like Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham. They did not like having Trump around. They were eager to get rid of him so quickly. So, that's
someone younger.
Yeah, I would hope for someone younger that would come out of nowhere and just like, and not have any connections to all these big organizations, and not take money from people like Bill Gates and Citibank, like Obama.
Yeah, go into the Obama Citibank cabinet.
So the people in this country sadly still think that the president-elect actually picks the cabinet, and the elites of Wall Street and Silicon Valley, who they take all these massive monetary donations from, actually pick the cabinet. And WikiLeaks, through the John Podesta emails, John Podesta was a friend of Obama and the Clinton campaign chairman. But when his emails leaked out, it revealed that in 2008, before the election even happened, Podesta gets an email from Michael Froman, the CEO of Citibank, with a long list of recommended appointees to the Obama administration. And among those recommendations were Eric Holder, who became the Attorney General, Timothy Geithner, who became the Treasury Secretary, Rahm Emanuel, who became the Chief of Staff, and so on and so forth. They just happened to secure those exact top-level positions that the CEO of Citibank recommended. So that's how the cabinet is picked. It's Wall Street. It's the deep state, so to speak.
Yeah, I didn't want to embarrass Barry like that, though.
I told you I was going to embarrass you, Barry.
Still my favorite clip. For the rest of time, if everyone's been watching the last few episodes, I will use that clip in every single episode moving forward. I mean, it would be nice if it's kind of like, I agree with you. Like, you'd be watching Trump, you'd be like, oh God, what have we gotten ourselves into? But the only reason I liked him in the first place is because he was not connected to anything, and he was like, fuck y'all.
Yeah, well, it's even with someone like that, the scary thing is like, as populist as he was and how much of like his own boss he was and wasn't going to listen to what anyone told him what to do, he still ends up with Rex Tillerson as his Secretary of State, who's the CEO of Exxon, and all these people who are Council on Foreign Relations members and really part of the power elite. They just end up in the cabinet. So again, it's like, even with Trump, I don't think he really made those picks. They say, well, we already got a bunch of arrangements and kind of a system in place, so here's the people you should probably hire. And if you don't, well, there might be some problems.
Yeah, like the mafia.
Exactly. That's how it works.
Does the president really do that much?
Considerably,
or is it a stupid job?
Well, I think they're sort of they're just put there to kind of look pretty for the press. And that's not to say they're not making really hard decisions, but they have all the so-called experts from the intelligence agencies and the State Department behind the scenes advising them on everything. And of course, all the bureaucrats, they're all connected with the lobbyists and the special interests. So that's ultimately who runs the show. It's all these organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, but that's the Council on Foreign Relations, which runs our government, is something we could get to on a future episode.
And on that note, we will end this episode. I think this was a pretty good one. Would like to have you on. I mean, you got how many parts in the Promethean Syndicate?
16 parts, 5 hours long.
A solid watch. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot more to talk about, obviously. And I do want to take this podcast into like a political segment. So would love to have you on again.
All right.
Perfect. We'll be going out here. And the next episode will be, fuck it, I'm probably doing one tomorrow night for Monday Night Football and to react to the games today. But thanks for joining, Aidan, and we'll go ahead and go out to a little song that we went out to last time, and it's called Friday Night, and I think everyone should listen to it. Thanks for joining, man.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.
Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might fly away to someplace they don't know who we are. Now I'm riding shotgun in your car. We drive through the city like explorers going 65. Flowing hair flying across your face. We left on Friday, now it's Saturday. Pressed jeans buttoned up, jeans iron slipping up. Red shoes walking slow, headphones blaring 3 stacks. Sunglasses flaring out, thick watch hanging low. Studded belt pulled taut, 3 stacks on the radio. Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might run away to some place we can be who we are. We can be who we are.